A special thank you today to Victoria Methodist in Bristol for our first song, Make Way, Make Way. Welcome to our Sheldon Sunday supplement for Palm Sunday, where we're thinking about Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Today, the Rev David Gray will be our speaker, but first, make way for the King.
Well, today is Palm Sunday. It's the day the church remembers Jesus' entry into Jerusalem. It's the start of Holy Week, a week in which we remember how it ends, Jesus' death on a cross on Good Friday. And it's Palm Sunday, of course, because we hear the Bible stories of Jesus being welcomed into Jerusalem by people waving palm branches as a sign of celebration. Each of the Gospels has a slightly different version of what happened during Palm Sunday. And I want us to think about how Luke relays the story in Luke chapter 19, verses 28 to 42. We'll now hear that reading.
Hi, I'm Martin, and I'm going to read now the story of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem. I'm reading from the Living Bible, and it's from Luke's Gospel, chapter 19, verses 28 to 42. After telling this story, Jesus went on toward Jerusalem, walking along ahead of his disciples. As they came to the towns of Bethphage and Bethany on the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 disciples ahead, with instructions to go to the next village. And as they entered, they were to look for a donkey tied beside the road. It would be a colt, not yet broken for riding. "Untie him," Jesus said, "and bring him here. And if anyone asks you what you're doing, just say, 'The Lord needs him.'" They found the colt as Jesus said, and sure enough, as they were untying it, the owners demanded an explanation. "What are you doing?" they asked. "Why are you untying our colt?" And the disciples simply replied, "The Lord needs him." So they brought the colt to Jesus and threw some of their clothing across its back for Jesus to sit on. Then the crowd spread out their robes along the road ahead of him. And as they reached the place where the road started down from the Mount of Olives, the whole procession began to shout and sing as they walked along, praising God for all the wonderful miracles that Jesus had done. "God has given us a king," they exulted. "Long live the king! Let all heaven rejoice! Glory to God in highest heavens!" But some of the Pharisees among the crowd said, "Sir, rebuke your followers for saying things like that." He replied, "If they keep quiet, the stones along the road will burst into cheers." But as they came closer to Jerusalem and he saw the city ahead, he began to cry. "Eternal peace was within your reach, and you turned it down," he wept. "And now it's too late."
Luke's version of the Palm Sunday story is different. Luke says in his version, there's no waving of palms. In fact, in Luke's version, there's no great crowd coming out of the city to meet Jesus with enthusiasm or with joy, because Jesus was the Messiah. That's how the other gospel writers portray it, but Luke doesn't. According to Luke, that just didn't happen. Luke says there was a crowd of disciples there, but that was it. Luke says as Jesus approached the city, the only other non-disciples waiting were the Pharisees. They said to Jesus, "Tell your disciples to be quiet and stop this demonstration." So in Luke's version, it's only Jesus' disciples who are shouting. And the clue of Luke's understanding of what happened on that Palm Sunday can be found in what the disciples were shouting. Of course, like all the other writers, Luke agrees they were shouting something like, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." But Luke then adds this. Luke says that as Jesus enters Jerusalem, the disciples also shouted, "Peace in heaven and glory in the highest." It sounds a bit like those words we hear in the Christmas story. Glory to God in the highest, on earth peace. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. But then Luke writes this. But as they came closer to Jerusalem and Jesus saw the city ahead, Jesus began to cry. Eternal peace was within your reach, and you turned it down, Jesus wept. And now it is too late. Jesus enters Jerusalem. And Jerusalem has a name which actually means peace. Salem is a form of shalom, the Hebrew word for peace. So Jesus approaches the city whose name is peace. He approaches as the Prince of Peace. And according to Luke, no one else showed up. Jesus was just there with his disciples and a few grumpy Pharisees. Pharisees who said, "You better keep them quiet or you'll end up in jail." So as Jesus saw the city, he wept over it, saying, "Eternal peace was within your reach, and you turned it down." This is Luke's version of the Palm Sunday story. And Luke says Jesus came to change the way we live in this world. He came to bring peace. He came to make the city of peace, Jerusalem, and all the cities of the world, cities of peace. But no one paid any attention. The peace that Jesus came to bring is not the peace that's merely the cessation of hostility. Often when there's a cessation of hostility, people are still alienated from one another. They are just separated so they don't fight anymore. That's not the peace Jesus came to bring. Jesus came to bring shalom, peace brought about by reconciliation. Shalom exists in right relationships. Shalom exists in living together in harmony. That is what shalom is about. Shalom exists when all people are reconciled and affirm those who are with them, rejoicing with them. Jesus wept for the city because eternal peace was within your reach and you turned it down, and now it is too late. This is the first time I've preached on Palm Sunday for 2 years, thanks to you know what. And I remember 2 years ago thinking about how our churches were silent during Holy Week and Easter. It was during that first lockdown that the towns we live in all became silent as well, didn't they? It was a slightly eerie time, and yet there was something about it. And I hoped, I suppose, that we'd come out of that lockdown with that sense of peace and tranquility remaining. But although we would go out for our walks and smile and everything would seem happy, now things seem to have slipped back. We seem to be back to normal. And at the time of recording this talk, on a much bigger scale, of course, is the war in Ukraine. The world's peace has been shattered once again. Jesus wept for the city. Eternal peace was within your reach, and you turned it down, and now it's too late. We seem to live in a culture that's often increasingly polarised. It seems that the only way to settle disputes is to be adversarial, to seek justice and compensation, rather than forgiveness and reconciliation, the way of peace. I think all too often we immediately assume in any dispute or conflict the other side is the enemy and we have to defeat them. Someone has to lose and someone has to be victorious. I'm right, you're wrong. Confrontation is all too often the way we deal with each other throughout our society. Confrontation's the only way we seem to know how to resolve differences between us. And the result is increased division. What we need more than ever before are the things that make for peace. Of course, the same happens in religion. Increasingly, religion is now used to divide people rather than unite us. It seems to me that the fastest growing religions and Christian denominations, it must be said, are those that claim to have the absolute truth and don't allow for any middle ground. They won't allow for any compromise. They won't allow for dialogue. After all, why talk to somebody if you've got the truth? In these religions and denominations, the view seems to be the only reason for talking to somebody is to convert them, not to listen to them or learn from them. Eternal peace was within your reach, and you turned it down, and now it's too late. We say words can't hurt you, but of course we know words do hurt. Words dehumanize. For example, there's a great deal of difference in referring to someone as a refugee as opposed to an illegal immigrant. How we refer to someone can make them seem less than human. But there are words that heal. There are words that build. There are words that create. Words that unite. Words that can redeem. There are words that can reconcile us to someone from whom we are estranged. There are words that can lead to peace. I was saddened when last Boxing Day I heard the news of the death of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. He was a remarkable man who'll be remembered for many things. But for me, I think one of the things that will be a lasting testimony to him is the work he did in South Africa after apartheid in establishing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He, like a number of other wise people, realised that unless something was done, South Africa could break out into civil war after the end of apartheid. So he worked, along with others, in establishing this Truth and Reconciliation Commission, in which people from both sides would come together and confess what they had done, but seek ways of building bridges, seeking ways of forgiveness, seeking ways of peace, not ways of retribution. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission sat for a number of years, and Desmond Tutu was one of the commissioners. And ultimately Tutu believed that the main achievement of the commission was in bringing about this long-term reconciliation, although even he recognised it had its shortcomings. But just imagine what might have happened in South Africa without the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, without people like Desmond Tutu willing to make peace. Eternal peace was within your reach, and you turned it down, Jesus wept, and now it's too late. Jesus enters the city of Jerusalem. He'll spend the next 5 days teaching, then be arrested, and then executed. At his crucifixion, according to Luke, Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. On a hill outside the city walls, with his very dying words, Jesus proclaimed peace and forgiveness. That is the message he wanted his disciples then and now to hear. A message he wanted his disciples then and now to take to heart and live by. A message he wanted his disciples then and now to take out into the world, to be peacemakers and peace bringers, to love one another, to forgive one another, to bring about peace. Amen.
Lord Jesus, as you rode along the streets of Jerusalem being welcomed by so many people on Palm Sunday, may we welcome you into our lives. May we welcome you into each moment of our day. We remember how people cut branches from the palm trees all around them and wave them in celebration of your arrival. May we be filled with joy at your presence with us. We know that you knew what lay ahead of you just a few days later, as you heard the praise from the crowds that day. May we understand and treasure the huge sacrifice that you made for us by your death on the cross. Please accept our heartfelt worship and help us to follow you our whole life long. Amen.